Rain fell in endless sheets, soaking the cracked pavement outside Benny's diner. The neon sign flickered weakly, buzzing in the storm like it was fighting to stay alive, much like Maya, who had just clocked out after a double shift. Her shoes squelched as she stepped into the dark street, her thin jacket no match for the cold. She wrapped her arms around herself, clutching a half-broken umbrella that barely did its job. It was past midnight, and the city had gone quiet, the kind of silence that only came before trouble. Maya walked faster, her eyes darting between the shadows. The alleyways of downtown weren't safe after hours, especially for someone like her, a 23-year-old waitress with no one waiting at home, just a stack of unpaid bills and a flickering bulb in a tiny apartment. She turned a corner near the bus stop, when something made her stop cold. At first, she thought it was a pile of trash bags by the curb. But then she saw a hand, pale, motionless, sticking out from beneath the rain. Her breath caught in her throat. Slowly, she stepped closer, heart pounding. Lying there was a young man, maybe her age, dressed in a black shirt torn at the shoulder, expensive fabric clinging to his skin. His dark hair was plastered to his forehead, and a thin stream of blood ran down from his temple, mixing with the rainwater. "Oh my God," she whispered, dropping her umbrella and kneeling beside him. His skin was cold. She pressed trembling fingers against his neck. There was a faint pulse, weak, but there. "Hey, can you hear me?" No response. She looked around, hoping someone might be nearby, but the street was deserted. Her phone was nearly dead, the screen cracked from an earlier fall. There was no time to call an ambulance, she had to find out who he was. Maybe she could call his family. She searched his jacket pocket and found a sleek black card with nothing but a phone number engraved in silver. No name, no logo, just numbers. Her instincts screamed don't. Something about it felt wrong, but she had no choice. She dialed the number with shaky fingers. The line rang once before a deep, controlled voice answered. "Who is this?" Her voice wavered. I found someone hurt. A man. He's unconscious near 5th and Rosemont. He had this number in his pocket." Silence. Not static. Silence so thick she thought the call had dropped. Then came the voice again, colder this time. "Describe him." Tall, dark hair, maybe early 20s. "He's bleeding from the head. Please, he needs help." "Don't move," the voice cut in. "Stay where you are." The line went dead. Maya stared at the phone, confused and frightened. Who was that? She looked back at the young man. His wristwatch gleamed under the streetlight, clearly worth more than her month's rent. The design was custom, gold edges, engraved initials, LD. Her stomach twisted. Whoever this guy was, he wasn't just rich, he was important. Within minutes, she heard it. The distant rumble of engines, growing louder. Headlights burst through the rain as 3 black SUVs screeched to a stop near her. Men in suits poured out, weapons drawn. Maya froze, instinctively raising her hands. A tall man in a long coat stepped forward, his presence commanding instant silence. His eyes locked on the body, then on her. "What happened?" he demanded, his tone more dangerous than loud. I just found him like this. I didn't do anything, I swear." The man knelt beside the injured boy, his expression tightening with something between rage and fear. He touched the boy's face gently. "Luca," he muttered under his breath. Maya realized the truth in that instant. She hadn't just called a father. She had called a man people feared, the kind of man whose name was spoken in whispers. And she had no idea that one phone call was about to change her entire life. Rain still poured down like a curtain between worlds as the men surrounded her. Maya's heart hammered so loudly she could barely hear the thunder anymore. Flashlights cut through the darkness, landing on her face, her trembling hands, the muddy hem of her uniform. Someone barked an order in Italian, harsh and clipped, and suddenly 2 men grabbed her by the arms, yanking her to her feet. "Wait, please, I just tried to help him," she cried out, twisting in panic. "Search her," another voice commanded. A man patted her pockets roughly, finding nothing but her cracked phone and the diner's pay slip. He looked up and shook his head. The man in the long coat, the one whose presence made the others step aside, finally stood to his full height. Water streamed from his slicked back hair as he turned toward her. His eyes were like ice, sharp, heavy, unreadable. "You called this number," he said, voice low and deliberate. "Yes, I found him." He stepped closer, and she instinctively took a step back, but the men behind her didn't let her move far. "Do you know who I am?" Maya shook her head, swallowing hard. "Good," he said coldly. "Then remember this. You stay where I tell you. You speak when I ask. Understand? She nodded quickly. He gestured, and two of his men carefully lifted the unconscious young man, Luca, onto a waiting stretcher from one of the SUVs. As they worked, the man knelt beside his son again, his fingers tightening around the boy's wrist as though willing him to wake up. The hardness in his eyes cracked for just a second. There was fear there, deep and buried, but it disappeared just as quickly. Maya stood frozen, drenched and trembling, watching this stranger's world unfold around her like a scene from a movie she didn't belong in. The power radiating from him was suffocating, not loud, not showy, just a quiet certainty that he was the kind of man people obeyed without question. Luca stirred faintly, groaning. One of the men leaned closer. Boss, he's breathing steady again. The man, Victor, looked up sharply. Luca, his voice softened for the first time, the way only a father's could. Can you hear me, son? Luca's eyelids fluttered. He blinked at the rain, disoriented. His lips moved weakly. She saved me, then his head lolled to the side, unconscious once more. Everyone froze. Victor's gaze flicked back to Maya. The silence that followed was heavy enough to drown in. He studied her face for several long seconds before speaking again. You saved my son. I tried, she stammered. He was just lying there, I couldn't. He raised a hand slightly, and she fell silent immediately. Take her with us, he ordered. What? No, wait, I didn't do anything wrong. Maya struggled, panic flooding her chest. One of the guards spoke quietly, Boss, she could be a witness. Or bait. Victor turned to him, his tone cutting. She's alive because my son said her name. That's enough. The man looked away. Maya's voice cracked as they guided her toward the SUV. Where are you taking me? To a place where you'll be safe, Victor replied, but there was something unreadable behind his words, something that didn't sound like safety at all. Inside the vehicle, she sat between two silent guards, the smell of leather and gun oil filling her nose. The city lights blurred through the tinted windows as they sped away. She tried to calm her breathing, but her thoughts spiraled. Who were these people? Who was this man whose voice alone could command an army? Across from her, Victor sat motionless, staring out the window. His jaw was set tight, his fingers tapping slowly against his thigh, a rhythm that carried more tension than shouting ever could. Finally, without turning to her, he spoke. My name is Victor DeLuca. Maya froze. She'd heard that name before, whispered by kitchen staff, spoken in the news, rumored in crime circles. The DeLuca family, old money, old power, and old crimes buried deep under polished marble floors. Victor finally looked at her. From now on, Miss Maya Carter. From now on, Maya Carter, he said slowly, you don't leave my sight until I know who tried to kill my son. Her breath caught. The car sped through the storm, leaving the diner, her old life, and every sense of safety she'd ever known behind. Maya didn't sleep that night, not that anyone expected her to. The DeLuca mansion was unlike anything she'd ever seen, perched on the edge of the city like a fortress made of glass and stone. Security cameras glimmered in every corner, and guards moved through the halls like shadows. Inside, the world smelled of power, expensive cigars, polished wood, and the faint scent of danger that never quite went away. They'd given her a guest room, more like a gilded cage. The sheets were silk, the room warm and soft, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she was trapped inside something beautiful and deadly. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Luca's pale face in the rain. When morning came, she found Victor waiting for her in a grand dining hall that felt more like a courtroom. He sat at the head of the long table, his suit immaculate, his expression unreadable. Sunlight spilled across his face, catching the faint scars that lined his jaw. Sit, he said simply. Maya obeyed, her heart still uneasy. He poured himself a cup of coffee and glanced at her. Eat, I'm not hungry, she murmured. You'll need your strength, he replied. You're in the middle of something you don't understand yet. She looked at him carefully. I just wanted to help. I didn't mean to get involved. That's the thing about good people, Victor said, his tone almost thoughtful. They never mean to get involved. Trouble finds them anyway. There was a strange sadness beneath his words. She didn't know what to say, so she kept quiet. After a moment, he leaned forward. Tell me again what you saw. Maya repeated everything, the alley, the blood, the number on the card. His eyes never left her face, searching for any hint of deceit. When she finished, he nodded once, slowly. My men found traces of gunpowder on the pavement, he said. Whoever attacked my son meant to kill him, but didn't finish the job. Her stomach turned. Do you know who did it? I have ideas. His voice hardened. But ideas aren't enough. I need proof. A knock at the door interrupted them. One of Victor's lieutenants entered, tall, scar-faced, with a tablet in hand. Boss, we've got footage from the camera near Rosemont. You should see this. Victor motioned for him to show it. Maya leaned in reluctantly as the video played, grainy footage of the alleyway. She saw herself running toward Luca, kneeling beside him. Then, a few seconds earlier, another man appeared on screen, wearing a mask, firing a gun before sprinting away into the shadows. Freeze it, Victor ordered. The frame stopped mid-motion, and even through the blur, there was something familiar in the attacker's build, tall, confident, moving like someone trained. The scarred lieutenant cursed under his breath. That's Marco, he muttered. Victor's expression darkened. He was at my table yesterday. Maya frowned. Who's Marco? Someone who forgot where loyalty ends and greed begins, Victor said quietly. He works for me. Or rather, he did. The realization hit her. Luca hadn't just been attacked. He'd been betrayed. Victor stood abruptly. Find him, he ordered. Alive. I want to hear him say who paid him. As the men rushed out, Maya spoke hesitantly. You think someone's trying to hurt your family? Victor turned to her, eyes sharp but weary. In my world, Miss Carter, someone is always trying to hurt my family. Later that afternoon, Maya visited Luca's room. He was pale but awake, a bandage wrapped around his head. When he saw her, he smiled faintly. You stayed. She hesitated. Your father didn't give me much of a choice. Luca chuckled weakly. He never does. Then his expression turned serious. Thank you, for not leaving me there. She shrugged, trying to hide the warmth in her voice. Anyone would have done the same. He studied her for a moment. No, most people would have looked away. Before she could reply, Victor appeared in the doorway. Luca, rest. Then, turning to Maya, you, with me. As she followed him down the marble corridor, she realized something unsettling. The fear she'd felt the night before was changing, shifting into curiosity, into something dangerously close to empathy. She wasn't just trapped in Victor DeLuca's world anymore. She was beginning to understand it. Night fell heavy over the DeLuca estate, the air thick with tension. Victor's men had been gone for hours, scouring the city for Marco. Maya sat in the corner of the sitting room, hands clasped tightly in her lap, listening to the muffled hum of engines outside and the occasional barked order from the guards. The house felt alive, like it was holding its breath, waiting for the storm to break. Victor stood near the fireplace, silent and unmoving, his back to her. The glow of the flames danced against the sharp lines of his face, casting shadows across the scars that told stories he'd never share. In his hand, he held a glass of whiskey that he hadn't touched. His stillness was more terrifying than anger. You should sleep, he said suddenly, not turning around. Maya's voice was soft. I don't think anyone in this house is sleeping tonight. He exhaled, a small sound between a sigh and a growl. You're right. The heavy doors burst open before she could say more. Two men dragged in Marco, beaten, bloodied, wrists bound behind his back. His lip was split, his eyes defiant even through the pain. Victor turned slowly, setting his glass down with measured calm. Boss, one of the guards said, we found him trying to cross the border. Victor stepped forward, stopping just a few feet away. You tried to kill my son, he said quietly. Marco spat on the floor. Your son was careless. He talked too much. I did what had to be done. Victor's jaw clenched. Who paid you? No answer. One sharp nod from Victor, and the guards slammed Marco to his knees. Maya flinched at the sound. Victor crouched down, his voice barely above a whisper, too calm to be safe. You've eaten at my table. You swore loyalty to my family. And you aimed a gun at my blood. Marco's grin was bitter, red with blood. Your empire's rotting, Victor. Everyone sees it but you. The Russians offered more than loyalty ever gave me. For the first time, Victor's composure cracked. He stood abruptly, fury seething in every muscle. And you took it, he said. You sold my son for a handful of silver. Marco laughed weakly. You're not a saint. Don't act like you are. Victor's hand moved to his side, drawing a gun with chilling precision. Maya stepped forward instinctively. Stop, please. The room froze. Victor turned his head slowly toward her, eyes blazing. He deserves to die, he said. Maybe, she whispered, trembling but standing firm. But if you kill him now, you'll start another war. Isn't that what you're trying to stop? Her voice cracked, but the words hit like a bullet. For a long moment, Victor said nothing. The only sound was the rain against the windows and Marco's labored breathing. Finally, Victor lowered the gun slightly. "Take him to the warehouse," he ordered his men. "Let him live with what he's done." They dragged Marco away, leaving silence behind. Maya's knees felt weak. She exhaled shakily, the adrenaline fading. Victor looked at her, not with anger now, but something far more complicated. "You shouldn't have stepped in. Then maybe you shouldn't have needed me too," she said softly. He almost smiled, almost. "You talk too much for a waitress." Before she could answer, a sudden crack shattered the air, a gunshot from the hallway. Victor turned, pushing her aside as the doors burst open again. Marco had somehow escaped the guards, blood running down his arm, a gun in his hand. Everything happened in a blur. The gun fired again. Victor moved to aim, but Maya stepped between them without thinking. Pain exploded through her side as the bullet hit. She collapsed into Victor's arms, the world fading into muffled noise. Victor's men swarmed the room, disarming Marco and dragging him down. But Victor didn't see any of it. His focus was on the trembling girl in his arms, her blood staining his shirt. "Maya, stay with me," he whispered hoarsely. "You're safe. You hear me? You're safe." Her voice was barely a breath. "You said, no one's ever safe in your world." He held her tighter. "Then I'll change it." Everything went dark for her. When Maya opened her eyes again days later, the first thing she saw was sunlight streaming through a window. Luca sat beside her bed, smiling weakly. "You're okay," he said. "You saved him." Across the room, Victor stood silently, watching. His suit was gone. He looked human for once, tired, haunted, and grateful. "You called me that night," he said quietly. "You saved my son. And somehow, you saved me too." Maya smiled faintly. Then maybe that call was meant to happen. Outside, dawn broke over the DeLuca estate, the light spilling across marble floors, washing away the darkness of the night before. For the first time in years, Victor DeLuca didn't feel like a man at war. He felt like a man given a second chance.